Next on the Daily Ledger, the Kavanaugh con game. Democrats continue to make a mockery out of the Supreme Court nomination process.
Plow through this nomination. That's what the Republican Majority Leader said over the weekend. We're going to plow through this nomination of Brett Kavanaugh for the Supreme Court. It doesn't sound to me like a recipe for fairness, and it certainly doesn't sound like a recipe for getting to the truth.
We will examine which senators are behind Kavanaugh and which ones are still on the fence. Also, Democrat cries to protect Rod Rosenstein and the Mueller probe.
The threat to Rod Rosenstein is a direct effort to intimidate and bully the special counsel. It is nothing more than an effort to obstruct justice if he is fired.
Also, Trump touting successes and global goals at the United Nations. Plus, best of Stop the Tape. The previous president taking credit for work done by the current president?
So just remember that when you hear these folks bragging about this economic miracle, just remember when it started. Just remember when the ball got rolling.
Plus, voters finding favorability in the Republican Party. Stand by. The doors to the newsroom are locked, and the PC police are not getting in. So sit back, relax, as we unfold today's edition of the Daily Ledger.
She is 100% credible, and when the American people hear from her, they will determine, as I have, that she is to be believed. Under no circumstances should Brett Kavanaugh be confirmed with a lifetime appointment to the U.S. Supreme Court before Mark Judge testifies under oath and before my client, Dr. Ford, and any other accuser has her day before that committee under oath.
Hello, everyone. I'm Joy Villa. Welcome to the Daily Ledger. Graham Ledger has the day off. Our cover story, the latest chapter in the Kavanaugh conundrum. A third accuser is now coming forward, joining Christine Blasey Ford and Deborah Ramirez in their claims of sexual misconduct by Judge Kavanaugh. Kavanaugh says he won't let false accusations drive him out of the process. This as the president and Republican leaders continue to defend the Supreme Court nominee.
Everybody who's called in, there have been a lot of people calling in, has been given an opportunity to come in and testify under oath as to whether some other occurrence went on. Most of them don't want to do that because once they realize they have to be under oath and there's potential criminal penalties, they become less interested. So look, we have two people here who have a different version of what has happened. We need to listen to them both respectfully and then make a decision. That's what we're here to do, to vote on this confirmation.
Of all of you standing here today, all men, everyone on the Judiciary Committee, all men, you don't have women making decisions about Judge Kavanaugh. What message does that send to the American people?
We're looking for the truth here. I don't think because you happen to be a male, you're disqualified from listening to the evidence, and making a decision based upon the evidence. As I said earlier, and I think you already know, we have hired a female assistant to go on staff and to ask these questions in a respectful and professional way. We want this hearing to be handled very professionally, not a political sideshow like you saw the put on by the Democrats when they were questioning Judge Kavanaugh. I think we ought to take everyone seriously. We're going to have the hearing on Thursday. That's to give us enough evidence of a way to evaluate the two people who could be the only people who apparently know anything about this. Listen to the evidence, evaluate the situation, and then vote.
To date, 43 Republicans say they'll back Kavanaugh's confirmation to the High Court, but 8 are still on the fence. They are Senators Susan Collins, Bob Corker, Mike Enzi, Jeff Flake, James Lankford, Jerry Moran, Lisa Murkowski, and Ben Sass. Joining me now from New York City, National Editor for Accuracy in Media, Carrie Sheffield. Hi, Carrie. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Joy. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So this is just crazy. I mean, what does this say, this whole Kavanaugh, controversy? What does this say about the protection of our brothers, our fathers, our friends, our husbands? Where's this going to lead to?
Well, right now, Joy, and what we do at Accuracy in Media is we call out media bias. And we are seeing the media has not even at this point tried to cover themselves in facts at all.
Right.
You have the New Yorker, which the New York Times said they wouldn't even touch the Ramirez story because they couldn't get any eyewitnesses to support what she was alleging. So that's why you had people trying to shop the story around, and even the New York Times wouldn't pick it up. So I was very disappointed to see the New Yorker running this, because the New Yorker had done some very excellent reporting around the Me Too movement. Because let's be honest, Joy, you and I both know there are men who are sexual predators, and they need to be held accountable. What's happening now, though, is that the standards of facts and evidence and data and everything that upholds the rule of law is going out the window, which is the hypocrisy of liberals, because they say President Trump undermines the rule of law. They are doing this very thing here with this Kavanaugh mess.
Absolutely. I think that feminists were supposed to be fighting for equality, but instead it feels like it's flipped. They don't want equality. They want sexism, but reverse. Take a look at this photo where they accuse Brett Kavanaugh of I don't know what. He's touching his young daughter, who is his child, and they're saying a perverse headline, basically saying he's a sexual predator, and using this photo with his daughter in a chaste embrace to, I don't know, say what? Where does this go, Carrie?
Well, this is, as Margaret Thatcher would say, she always cheers up immensely when people go after a personal attack, because it means they don't have a single policy argument left. So that's what I would say to Judge Kavanaugh if he were here today with us. The fact that they're going after you personally and smearing you in such a way, despite the fact that there were 6 FBI checks that found nothing of this sort, not a whiff of any sort of misconduct, not a whiff of any sort of sexual harassment or assault or anything of this nature at all. The fact that Senator Dianne Feinstein sat on this allegation for almost 6 weeks. This begs credibility as to whether or not she actually cares about sexual assault victims. And I think it's truly disgusting that she is weaponizing the Me Too movement, which is a righteous and just cause.
Absolutely.
They are weaponizing it. They are throwing standards out the window. And I said this to a friend of mine. These liberals love to go and dress up like the handmaiden tales, you know, the long red robes and the white hats. And this whole film, this whole show is about a dystopian society where science doesn't matter, and it's all about superstition. And they're trying to say that's what the Trump administration is all about.
That's what they're about.
The very same society that they would like to create, an anti-science, anti-evidence, anti-data society. Hypocrites.
It's hypocrites. I mean, Carrie, it blows my mind, because like you, I support the Me Too movement. You know, Weinstein. There's a lot of pigs out there that do take advantage of women and men. But Brett Kavanaugh, first of all, this guy is the most squeaky clean, goody two-shoes guy they could find. Let me ask you something. These brutal attacks on his character, I love that you say it means they don't have anything. Do you think this is going to pan out in Kavanaugh's favor, or do you think they are going to be able to drum up evidence, even though they found nothing so far?
Well, I do believe that at the end of the day, the truth shall set you free. Everything that I can see, all the evidence, all of the data, all of the science, to me suggests that Kavanaugh is a good man, that he did not perform these alleged assaults. And so the truth will have its day. And I know this isn't popular with some viewers, but when Roy Moore was running, I said that I thought Republicans should step aside and not support him because there was so much evidence. And in fact, Roy Moore himself even said that he dated teenage girls. You had multiple eyewitnesses of him preying after young women. You had Senator Mitch McConnell himself actually saying Roy Moore should step aside. This is the very same Mitch McConnell, who did not exploit that Senate seat for political expediency, who is now defending Kavanaugh based on evidence.
Right. Well, I also think about, where are all those victims now? Why aren't they still seeking justice? Why aren't they still in the news? Why aren't they still trying to prosecute even Roy Moore and all these other guys? It seems like if you're going to hold on to a story for this long, and I'm not saying I doubt, their truthfulness, it could have happened to them. These ladies could have actually been sexually abused. Just like Kavanaugh said, he doesn't doubt that this story could be true, but it's not him. So I tend to say that there's no evidence here. These eyewitnesses are falling like flies. It just does not seem credible. Now, you are all about accuracy in media, which I love, Carrie. I want to ask you one quick question. Now, Judge Kavanaugh, he's pro-life. He's proudly pro-life, as am I. And I know the kind of attacks, usually sexual in nature, weirdly enough, that you get standing for life. Do you think this has something to do with the left, the self-righteous left, attacking him because of his stance for life?
Oh, absolutely. Well, and even during his hearings, he was asked about this question of life, and he said, I will look at case law. He will not speculate, which is the Ginsburg rule. You know, when Ruth Bader Ginsburg was undergoing her confirmation, it is not her place or any potential Supreme Court nominee's place to speculate on any case that may or may not come before him or her. And so he refused to play into their game. And because of this, yes, you're right, they're extrapolating, they're throwing everything that they think will stick. And they believe that this is, quote unquote, their seat because Justice Kennedy, who retired, was more of a quote-unquote swing vote, but that guy was appointed by Ronald Reagan, who was a strongly pro-life voice. Ronald Reagan, no wavering, being a pro-life voice. So I would argue that that seat with Kennedy actually should have been robustly pro-life. And look, I think that you're right, absolutely, that the reason progressives and liberals are digging in so much on this has to do with abortion, yes. But honestly,
I mean, they're politicizing something.
Happening.
They keep politicizing. If they were really for the victims, the alleged victims, they wouldn't make it a political sort of catastrophe that it is. They're bringing all politics. Listen, if you don't like someone, which you have a right to not like somebody's politics, I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but to put this in the same context as I don't like what you say on this issue, I mean, it doesn't seem very accurate at all to me.
Nope. Thank you, Joy, for calling that out. And again, truth at the end of the day will set us free.
Absolutely.
The truth will come out. As Judge Kavanaugh said in his interview on Fox News last night, he has faith in God. He has faith in the American people. He has faith in our justice system. I do as well. And I hope that the Senate will not be cowed by people who would dismantle and destroy our justice system, which demands evidence, which demands data and science to back up any sort of ruling.
Thank you so much, Carrie. You've been a delight. Thank you for reporting accuracy in media. Coming up next, Rod Rosenstein and the future of the Justice Department. Also ahead, America First at the United Nations.
China's market distortions and the way they deal cannot be tolerated. As my administration has demonstrated, America will always act in our national interests.
The threat to Rod Rosenstein is a direct effort to intimidate and bully the special counsel. It is nothing more than an effort to obstruct justice if he is fired. And my hope is that my Republican colleagues will rise to the challenge, a direct attack on our democracy, a break the glass moment when they promised they would produce a firestorm of condemnation. They have to have the backbone now.
Page 2 now, the fate of Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. Rosenstein will remain on the job until at least Thursday. That's when he's scheduled to sit down with President Trump to discuss his future at the Justice Department.
Morning, Mr. Rosenstein. Has anyone asked you to resign?
U.S. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, the man overseeing Robert Mueller's probe into Russian meddling in the 2016 presidential election, headed to the White House Monday amid reports that he had offered to resign in anticipation of being fired by President Trump. But for now, Rosenstein still has a job. That may change after he meets with Trump on Thursday.
We want to have transparency, we want to have openness, and I look forward to meeting with Rod at that time.
White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders tweeted Monday that Rosenstein and Trump had an extended conversation about recent news stories, alluding to Friday's explosive New York Times report that said Rosenstein suggested last year secretly recording Trump with the aim of exposing White House chaos, and discussed recruiting cabinet members to invoke the 25th Amendment to remove Trump from office for being unfit. Rosenstein called the Times report inaccurate and factually incorrect. If Rosenstein, a longtime Trump target, departs the Justice Department, that could have a profound effect on the Russia probe, says Reuters correspondent Jan Wolf.
Rosenstein is a Republican, but Democrats have rallied behind him with an outpouring of support in the last year because he has allowed the Russia investigation to continue despite the president's repeated attempts to portray it as a witch hunt. For about a year, firing Rosenstein has been a huge issue for Democrats and some Republicans who said that it would be an attempt to interfere with the investigation and to obstruct justice. The New York Times reporting, if accurate, could give President Trump his best opportunity to remove Rosenstein from office without having that specter of obstruction of justice. The president could say, I'm doing this because he was disloyal and crossed a line by invoking the 25th Amendment to remove me, his boss, from office.
Rosenstein assumed oversight of the special counsel's Russia probe after Attorney General Jeff Sessions recused himself. Democrats are predictably wringing their hands over Rosenstein's fate, saying his termination would be tantamount to obstruction of justice. Joining me now from Miami, Florida, former Trump campaign director of Communications New York and Republican political strategist, Michael Caputo. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So what do you make of all this? Do you think Trump is going to fire him, or is he going to quit? Is he going to cause more issues? Is he just trying to get a book deal like James Comey? What is going on here?
Well, first of all, I'm delighted to see that the Democrats found time to wring hands over another topic beyond Brett Kavanaugh this week. It was gave me a little bit of a smile. But look, you know, Rod Rosenstein was recommended to the president by establishment Republicans. And a lot of us have had a problem with that, especially those of us who have kind of been in the crosshairs of the Mueller investigation. And let's be frank, I mean, back in July of this year, I believe it was, the congressional investigators, you know, on the Republican side were asking for the McCabe memos where this was discussed, and we didn't get them then, and now we know why. I believe the New York Times story. I believe that Rosenstein not only was talking about the 25th Amendment, but was also entertaining the idea of wiring up the people who were interviewing for the new job of FBI director. But we also see in the reporting that he was really upset about his memo about the firing of James Comey being used as a bludgeon. And he was shocked at the backlash he got from Democrats. And listen, it really is a personnel matter. This is not something a special counsel needs to investigate. It's a question of whether or not the president wants him to continue in his job. And at the meeting on Thursday, if the president is satisfied that Rosenstein is being absolutely candid, and he's satisfied that he no longer feels that way, you know, maybe the president wants him to continue, and the president deserves to have whatever he wants in decisions on his personnel.
It's absolutely true. Let me ask you something, Michael. Do you think Mueller is losing control of this ludicrous investigation? Do you see sort of the strings starting to unravel of this sweater, or is it tightening up?
Well, I think whether it's unraveling or tightening up, I think Director Mueller is coming to a close. You know, I've said for a couple of weeks now that this thing needs to end, but I didn't think that the president should end it himself by firing Rosenstein or whatever. I believe the Director Mueller needs to draw this to a conclusion. And we see a lot of reporting coming, leaks from here or there, about how the director's office over at the Office of Special Counsel and the president's attorneys are reaching, coming close to reaching conclusions as to what the president will give and how he gives it. We see some reporting that the Mueller investigation is satisfied with a written Q&A on some topics. That means that I believe the director is coming to the end of this thing. It's time for it to end.
It is.
I don't think he's lost control of it. I think we're starting to see the checkered flag.
Yeah, I think it really is time for it to end. It's just been going on and on and on. They've got nothing. What do you think is going to happen in your prediction on Thursday?
Well, I'll tell you, I believe that the president's, I think Rosenstein's going to be candid. I believe that he was talking about the 25th Amendment. I think he was, entertaining the idea of wiring up people that were coming to talk to the president. That, by the way, any employer in any other industry would probably fire that person immediately, no matter how that interview went.
Right.
But, if the president's, let's say Don McGahn, it's a personnel matter, maybe Don McGahn can interview the people who interviewed for FBI director, which, by the way, includes Director Mueller. He interviewed for the job, was offered the job, if you believe Bob Woodward, and turned it down, and then the next day was appointed as special counsel. Was he asked to wire himself up? And if the president's satisfied with his answers, perhaps Rosenstein can stay on. But the one thing that is really big here, and not many people are talking about,
tell me.
If at any time is in his tenure as Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein believed that the president could not continue in his job, he pretty much has to recuse himself of the Russia investigation. No judge, for example, would ever be able to sit on the bench in a case if he was that close to it.
Right. Oh, well, it's a lot of craziness. Thank you, Michael, for joining us. Appreciate it. Coming up next, President Trump's immigration overhaul and the fight to stop sanctuary cities, as the Daily Ledger continues. Page 3 now, battling back against the invasion at our border. President Trump is proposing a new rule to make it more difficult for immigrants to come or stay in the U.S. if they access public benefits.
The Trump administration announced a new proposal over the weekend that could impact 380,000 people in the country. The proposed rule could deny green cards to any immigrants who receive public assistance, such as food stamps, Medicaid, or housing subsidies. Walter Krall, who is an immigrant himself, agrees with this proposal.
If you come, you should basically look after yourself and don't ask for help from the country that you just arrive at.
Lawyer Jennifer Ha has been working with immigrants for 9 years. She says it's not easy to start over on your own.
With that limited income, they are in need of some of these services. If they are already kind of living in the shadows and then deny benefits that are being accessed mostly by children, then it puts their families in a much more difficult situation.
The Department of Homeland Security says their plan would save federal taxpayers $2.7 billion annually. But immigrant advocates say this proposal forces families to choose between their green cards or food, shelter, and medical care.
It does send a message that the U.S. is not a place that is welcoming to immigrants, that you will be penalized for many things that perhaps are not even your fault.
The proposed rule expands the interpretation of a person who relies on government assistance through public benefits such as food stamps or public housing. Joining me now from Southern California, spokesperson for the Fight Sanctuary State movement, Ben Berquan. Hi, Ben. Welcome to the show. So, Ben,
thanks for having me.
I got to say, I don't think anyone should be on food stamps. And my ancestors on my dad's side came from Italy, came from Argentina, through Ellis Island. And you know what they did? They started businesses and they were able to take care of their family that way, not asking for government handouts. What do you make of this?
Yeah, we've become a country of welfare, a welfare state. My wife did the same thing. They came in from Laos as refugees. They had to have sponsors when they came in and go through the process to make sure that they weren't going to be a burden on our society. Now we have this insane logic where America is expected to take in everyone, legal or illegal, and then also provide additional benefits. Now, obviously, these are people with green cards. I absolutely support it. You should, if you're coming to America, you should be able to stand on your own 2 feet when you get here.
Absolutely, absolutely. In other countries like Denmark and Sweden, you actually have to have a certain income flow to be able to make it into the country. My husband, by the way, is a legal immigrant. He came from Denmark, and we went through that expensive and long process of doing it legally. And guess what? We don't take any government benefits. Now, sanctuary cities are not only hurting the country, I mean, I know they're hurting us, but how much are they hurting Americans?
Well, in California alone, it's over $20 billion a year that illegal aliens take. When you compare the net, what they put into the system versus what they take out. Nationally, it's over $116 billion from FAIR's last numbers. It's a huge dollar amount, but that doesn't take in, that's the dollars that they take. The Fight Sanctuary State initiative to protect American citizens over illegal aliens, we're looking primarily at the life impact, the impacts on human lives. Thousands of American citizens are killed every year by illegal aliens that have no right to be here in the first place. And then they're protected by criminal policies like politicians like Gavin Newsom and Jerry Brown and Kevin Leon and the rest of them.
Well, they want votes. They want those illegal votes. We don't even have to have a voter ID system anymore. So what can be done about this? What do we have to absolutely do to protect our borders, Ben?
Well, support the president. We support building the wall. We are in the process of, we have an initiative to make it illegal in California to harbor illegal aliens under these sanctuary policies. It would criminalize politicians who protect criminal illegal aliens. And so that's one, if anyone wants to join us in that, fightsanctuarystate.com, we'd ask you to do that. And then go to every single municipality that you're involved with. Contact the people that you have influence over and demand that they uphold their oath. When they swear an oath to uphold the Constitution and protect it from enemies, both foreign and domestic, we have to demand that they uphold that oath. And this is our effort to do that with the Fight Sanctuary State initiative across the state of California is what we believe is one part in this fight to restore law.
That's wonderful. Now, you are persecuted a lot. I saw a video where you got physically assaulted for your conservative beliefs. I know personally, I have had death threats on my life. I had a team that went out. We sang the national anthem at the Trump Star. We got physically assaulted. It's a wild insanity out there. Has this dampened any of your views or your passion for fighting sanctuary cities?
No, in fact, it's made my resolve that much stronger. When you see that people can come and simply for standing up for the rule of law and for America, and they believe that they have the right to physically assault you, it just makes me know that we have to stand up now. If we do not stand now, we're going to lose this nation.
Absolutely.
And I'll take the hits to my head. I'll take it. What I don't want to see is my wife, my daughter, the next generations having to do it. I believe we have to fight now and end this cancer, destroy this cancer. Otherwise, it's going to destroy our country. So I'm honored to be able to do it.
I 100% agree with you. Now, you're at a rally in Fresno. Is that right? You're going to a rally? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, there's these. The interesting thing is it's all connected. So there's these. The Democratic Socialists of America are targeting our congressman here, Devin Nunes, who actually does his job, upholds his oath, and is helping shine light on the deep state. And so they're pumping in millions of dollars against him. And every week they have these protests. They bring out the Trump chicken. They do all this nonsense.
Oh,
so we go out there. But it's all connected. All of these people, all the sanctuary policies, the people that are out there screaming about Kavanaugh, trying to block that nominee, screaming about Trump, screamed about Nunes. It's all connected. It's all anti-American leftism. And one of the big groups behind it's the ACLU. It used to be the American
they're crazy.
Now it's the Anti-American Civil Liberties Union.
It's crazy. I mean, I'm just glad we have some patriots like you out there on the front line. So thank you for what you do, Ben. Coming up next, best of Stop the Tape, the wild last-minute departmental spending spree in Washington, D.C. Also ahead, rallying Republicans to keep Iowa red in November.
I think we have to frame that up and give the voters the clear, contrasting choices. And I think when you do that, we can keep the House.
Now, page 4. Best of Stop the Tape. Here's Graham Ledger with more on the previous president taking credit for work done by the current president.
Now, page 4. Fiscal insanity in Washington, D.C. There is a mad dash to spend our money. That's right, hundreds of billions of newfound tax dollars are being gobbled up by departments and agencies before the end of the fiscal year in Washington, D.C. Yes? These bureaucrats must spend this money or else. Or else what? Or else our dollars are returned to the United States Treasury. Now, we wouldn't want that, right? We wouldn't want our tax dollars going back to the people or perhaps used to pay down the exploding national debt. No, these departments and agencies must spend this money because we have a use it or lose it system. And it is gross and disgusting and fiscally insane. Now, to add to the fiscal insanity, enter the 44th President of the United States. He's out there on the campaign trail attempting to rewrite Obama history. He's telling friendly crowds that he saved the U.S. economy and that he is responsible for the current economic boom.
During the economic crisis, return the economy to healthy growth.
Stop tape. Healthy growth, as defined by this guy, the 44th President, Barack Obama, is an average, by my calculation, and I kept score at home, an average of 1.7% GDP during his 8 years in office. Now, compare that to just the first, 18 months of the Trump presidency, where we have now in this year, this calendar year, GDP coming in at over 4%, possibly in the third quarter could be well over 4%. I predicted on this program before President Trump was even sworn in that if we get someone like a President Trump who happens to embrace the free market system, that we could easily return to 4, 5, 6, 7% GDP. And it appears as though we are well on our way, despite 8 years of Obama. Roll tape.
The longest streak of job creation on record.
Stop tape. Yeah. When you hit rock bottom and you have virtually no job creation because of your horrible policies that almost destroyed our free market system, sure, you're going to have job creation once you release the well-shined shoe from the neck of the U.S. economy just a little bit. Roll tape.
Which continues to today. Thanks to folks like Rich and Betty, we covered another 20 million Americans with health insurance.
Stop tape. It's interesting. We were told before Obamacare there were 30 million Americans without health insurance. He's saying now that 20 million Americans were covered. Then we had Bernie Sanders just the other day saying, no, we have 30 million Americans without health care coverage. Figures lie and liars figure. Roll tape.
Cut our deficits by more than half.
Stop tape.
Partly by
in 2009, 2010, 2011, you had a president, Democrat, and a Congress, Democrat, that went crazy, and it was a little bit of hangover from George W. Bush as well, that went absolutely on a spending binge and thrust us deeper into national debt. So sure, if you start lowering this deficit spending, it's going to appear as though you lowered the deficit. But what he is preying upon is the ignorance of the vast majority of Americans, certainly the vast majority of the people in his audience, that the debt rose exponentially somewhere in the neighborhood of $7, $8, $9 trillion while this guy was in office, thus sealing the fate for my daughter and my daughter's children for what eventually is going to happen in this country. At some point, somebody is going to have to pay the piper. Somebody's going to have to pay off this $22 trillion debt when it hits $30 or $40 trillion, which at this point is on a trajectory to do that. There's no one addressing this issue in Washington, D.C. No one seriously addressing it anyway. Roll tape.
I'm making sure the wealthiest Americans, folks like me now, paid their fair share of taxes.
Stop the tape. It's so disgusting the way he talks about himself, but I'll play along. Fair share. Who defines fair share exactly? I believe there should be zero income tax at any level in this republic because you are taxing a person's labor, and labor is a product of a finite amount of time on this earth. Sure, find another way to tax gasoline or, sales tax or possibly some form of property tax, fine. But we should not be taxing income in this country. It is absolutely un-American. And I believe that it is immoral to have a tax on a person's way of making a living and subsistence on this planet. Absolutely wrong. So this is why the November election is so crucial. This guy, if the Democrats regain control of the House, then we will never get answers to what Obama knew about abuse of power during the 2016 election, not to mention never get the wall. If ever there was a reason for Republicans to go to the polls in November, it should be funding the wall and holding the 44th president accountable.
Coming up next, President Trump tackles tough topics at the United Nations as the Daily Ledger continues. Page 5 now. President Trump touts successes and global goals at the United Nations. President Trump lauded the success of his America First agenda, saying the U.S. is a stronger, safer, and richer country than when he first took office.
We have engaged with North Korea to replace the specter of conflict with a bold and new push for peace. In June, I traveled to Singapore to meet face-to-face with North Korea's leader, Chairman Kim Jong-un. We had highly productive conversations and meetings, and we agreed that it was in both countries' interest to pursue the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. The United States has just announced tariffs on another $200 billion in Chinese-made goods, for a total so far of $250 billion. I have great respect and affection for my friend, President Xi, but I have made clear our trade imbalance is just not acceptable. China's market distortions and the way they deal cannot be tolerated. Illegal immigration exploits vulnerable populations, hurts hardworking citizens, and has produced a vicious cycle of crime, violence, and poverty. Only by upholding national borders, destroying criminal gangs, can we break this cycle and establish a real foundation for prosperity. We recognize the right of every nation in this room to set its own immigration policy in accordance with its national interests, just as we ask other countries to respect our own right to do the same.
Now, the president has ruffled feathers at the United Nations. His decisions to withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal, the Paris Climate Accord, and an Asia-Pacific trade pact have riled adversaries and allies alike. He's also caused waves with steep tariffs, but insists it's all in the best interests of America. Joining me now on the Daily Ledger Page 5 beat from Washington, D.C., multimedia manager at Americans for Limited Government, Natalia Castro. Hi, Natalia.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So President Trump seems to have upset a few people, delighted other people. Who do you think is really on his side, and who do you think he was talking to at this address to the UN?
Well, I think he was sending a message to countries all over the world. He wanted to show that we can have peace, but we must do it through strength. And while he definitely ruffled a few feathers, he also made a lot of friends because he reminded the global community that what's best for every country individually is going to end up being best for the entire world. I think right now one of his big kind of turning into an adversary almost is going to be the EU because, like you said, the Paris Climate Accord, the Iran deal, we've seemed to break away from them a little bit, but I believe he is doing what's best for the world and all global powers, and every country should realize that.
I agree with you. I mean, if it was Hillary Clinton, we'd be eating nuclear fallout with our cornflakes for breakfast. I mean, she couldn't have handled the, North Korea. I really think that what he's saying is America first above all these other countries, and they may not be warm to his message, but it looks like other countries might. What about China? What do you think China is saying about these tariffs?
I think China is going to be forced to come to the negotiating table. They're realizing for the first time in a long time, we have a president who isn't playing games.
That's right.
He's very committed to creating trade deals that are fair and are good for the United States. So yes, that upsets China, but they're going to have to come to the table and offer trade deals that work for the United States as well, and they're not going to be able to just get away with cheating the system anymore.
Absolutely. I think it's about time. They've taken enough money from the American economy and American businesses. I mean, we got to buy American. We got to hire American. I think that President Trump will be up for a Nobel Peace Prize on his exemplary work with these peace negotiations. How possible do you think that is?
I think it's extremely possible. One of the things he highlighted today was how, because of the efforts led by the United States and assistance with countries across the Middle East, we have been able to almost completely eradicate ISIS. And that is a huge victory that doesn't often get discussed. But between North Korea and the almost complete eradication of ISIS, I think Trump is definitely presenting himself as someone worthy of the Nobel Peace Prize.
Absolutely. I mean, it's huge. Even talks with the Middle East. I mean, he's doing these things that nobody has ever done in history. No president has been able to make the peace happen like he has. I see a lot of plus sides, but do you see any potential pitfalls after his UN speech?
I think the big area of conflict moving forward is going to be our relationship with Iran. Just this week, members of the EU have discussed ways to circumvent U.S. sanctions on Iran in order to help this country, despite their vast human rights abuses, and President Trump, who has had a much stronger stance, saying, we're not removing any sanctions until we see some denuclearization efforts. So I think that's going to be a point of conflict moving forward. But at the end of the day, either you're on the side of a country known for human rights abuses or you're against them. And the United States, I think, is taking the right position on being against them.
I fully agree. President Trump handled himself so well. Take a quick listen to this soundbite.
In less than 2 years, my administration has accomplished more than almost any administration in the history of our country. America's so true. Didn't expect that reaction, but that's okay.
I mean, you gotta love a man who can stand up there and when they start to laugh at him, handle it just expertly. I mean, I have seen the president speak multiple times. He's funny. He's got a sense of humor. He's in the moment. That was just great to see.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And those leaders might be laughing, but the people in their country are looking to the successes of the United States, and they're not laughing. I have a feeling they want the same thing in their country.
I agree. Natalia, thanks for joining us. Coming up next, Republican favorability, reaching its highest point in 7 years, as the Daily Ledger continues. Page 6 now, keeping Iowa red. At a Faith and Freedom Coalition dinner, Iowa GOP leaders rallied the base and urged Republicans to turn out to vote for the midterm elections. Lawmakers like Congressman Jim Jordan reiterated the importance of keeping the House.
Iowa Republicans encouraged those at the Faith and Freedom Coalition dinner to turn out in November to keep Iowa red.
We're going to need a lot of prayers for this election because they're coming at us hard and furious.
Acknowledging a tough race ahead, Governor Kim Reynolds touted her accomplishments during her first year in office, including the signage of the fetal heartbeat bill.
I'm proud to be the governor of not only the #1 state in the nation, but the #1 state when it comes to life.
It is very important that we all come together and we make sure that we are standing up for the most vulnerable in our population, and that would be those that are unborn.
Usually I'm in Iowa for some kind of wrestling competition.
Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan headlined the event. He's a popular political figure among Christian conservatives. Jordan encouraged Iowa voters to send the state's 3 GOP House members back to Washington, stressing the stark contrast between Democrats and Republicans.
I think we have to frame that up and give the voters the clear, contrasting choices. And I think when you do that, we can keep the House.
Now, rallying the base is definitely important going into midterm elections. And according to a new poll, it looks like it's resulting in some favorable outcomes for the Republican Party as well. Joining me now from Reston, Virginia, from the Media Research Center, Director of MRC TV, Eric Shiner. Hi, Eric. Love the Faith and Freedom Coalition. They did some great stuff. I love them. I spoke at an event there last year. So what do you make of this rallying and this new enthusiasm?
Well, this enthusiasm, we're seeing it across the board. A new Gallup poll came out yesterday, and it's stating that 45% of America is supporting the GOP, has a favorable opinion of the GOP. Let's put it that way, has a favorable opinion of the GOP, which is some of the highest ratings that they've seen in a number of years.
Wow,
People
7
seem
years.
to be coming out and saying, you know, yeah, 7 years. And not only that, but I mean, these are people that are seeing numbers across the board in many different categories come up. And one of the main ones is Republicans themselves having a positive view of the party, and also independents that share some Republican views having a very positive view of the party. That's going up a high percentage as well, considering this poll. I think it went up from 65% to 85%
wow,
in just a year.
Incredible. You know, this is great news. I can't help think that the drove of people walking away from the Democratic plantation and people of color, young people, millennials, are affecting these polls. How do you think this is going to pan out in 6 weeks for the midterms?
Well, it's interesting. A lot of people are looking at these poll numbers and saying this could be good. This could remind folks of 2010, where the rating, the support for both parties was fairly similar. We do have to mention in this case, the Democrats did get 44% to the GOP's 45% favorability rating in this poll. But I mean, what's interesting here is when you look at it, and they break down the numbers where it happens and the people that are likely to vote. You know, you think of the middle class. Well, guess what? It's gone up significantly. Well, with the middle class, it's 49% say they have a favorable opinion of the Republican Party. That has gone up dramatically. You have it going up with women, higher than it has been before. I believe 40% of women is the current number. Men, 50%. But of course, you know, despite all that we hear, who's the party of the wealthy? Well, guess what? The wealthy tend to support the Democrats. That's one section where the Democrats polled higher with
despite
favorability.
What they say,
Surprise,
right?
You're not going to hear that a lot of places.
No, despite what they say, they want us to give away our wealth. Meanwhile, they're the ones hoarding it. You know, I also saw that the consumer confidence hit an all-time high, 138.4 in September versus 132.
Yeah, that's gone up all-time high. And of course, the Consumer Confidence Index is consumers assessing you know, what they're planning on spending, what they're planning on investing, and generally what their positive views are. That has gone up dramatically. And really, a lot of people are saying the highest it's ever been is about 144%. That was in 2000. The dot-com boom, the internet's booming. Everyone's feeling very positive. They're saying we might see those kind of numbers by the end of September, the way things are going. That could be amazing. But this is also the highest it's been in about 18 years.
Wow. Lots of optimism. Lots of optimism. Looks like Donald Trump's promises made, promises kept for the economy are starting to show. Thank you so much, Eric, for joining us. Coming up next, Hollywood falling on the wrong side of history again, as the Daily Ledger continues. Welcome to the back page. Some final thoughts now. Hollywood chooses to be on the right side of history by showcasing equality and fairness regarding the Kavanaugh hearing. Just kidding. Yet again, the rich and pitiful Mean Girls and Boy Toys squad continue to tell us how we should live our lives. A U.S.-wide walkout took place yesterday, organized by the Time's Up movement. Meanwhile, Emmy Rossum, Deborah Messing, Samantha Bee, and Kerry Washington took to social media to post #TrustWomen, Time's Up, and pouty selfies. Emmy Rossum and her whole set took a minute of silence in support of Kavanaugh's evidenceless accusers. I think a few months of silence would truly do her cause right. This just reminds me that Hollywood liberals are getting dumber and more out of touch with their self-righteous causes than ever before. Remember last week's Emmys? Me neither. Well, multi-millionaire Blackish actress Jennifer Lewis showed up wearing a bejeweled Nike sweatshirt to show her support for Colin Kaepernick. When asked why, her answer was a clueless, "I didn't have anything better to do." Nothing better, Jennifer? Like maybe using your money to build schools or jobs in the inner cities, or joining me and hundreds of churches, groups, and the LAPD at the monthly peace rides to bring down gang violence? No, of course not. That doesn't bring out enough press to satisfy her. I have a message for Jennifer Lewis and any person of color who supports Colin Kaepernick and his anti-police, anti-American, money-making rhetoric. Nike and Colin Kaepernick are using you like Bill Clinton used Monica Lewinsky. Your struggles, our struggles, are not for sale. And as a Black American woman, I'm mortified and disgusted by your utter ignorance and willingness to put millions of dollars into the pockets of uncaring, unfeeling millionaires. That is not woke, and neither are you. I stand by and with the millions of Americans who put their money where their mouth is, donating, serving, teaching, helping, and volunteering, not for the clicks, but for the betterment of all people. I thank you, true Americans, for your service, and I thank you, our viewers, for your continued support. This edition of the Daily Ledger is on its way to the archives of the Library of Congress. Thank you for watching. Filling in for Graham Ledger, I'm Joy Villa. Stay strong, Patriots.